Hey everybody, thank you for attending another 5-minute fun video. Today we're going to be talking about acids and bases. So to define what an acid is any compound that starts with hydrogen. So anything that has hydrogen as the first element listed, and then one, two, or a million other elements, that would become an acid. And a base is anything that ends with OH. Anything that ends with this hydroxide ion. So anything that ends with hydroxide, that is a base. Anything that starts with hydrogen is an acid. Anything that ends with hydroxide is a base. Now, in terms of naming acids and bases, what we need to do is we need to clarify one or two different things. We need to know what a monatomic substance is, and we need to know what a polyatomic substance is. Monatomic, you can break it down into the two different parts of the words. Mono, atom, means that there is one other atom or one atom. In the case of acids, when we're referring to hydrogen, we are talking about something that has hydrogen and one other atom. That would be monatomic. If something was polyatomic, it would have more than one atom. And so when we're looking at our acids, we would say that something that's monatomic would be something like HBr. The actual name of this is hydrobromic acid, and we'll get to that in a second. But there's only one other atom other than the hydrogen. In terms of polyatomic, the most common example here is H2SO4. There's an S and four oxygens. So there's five other atoms. In other words, this is polyatomic. Now, in terms of naming the actual acids themselves, the bases are really easy to name because they're something hydroxide. Acids get a little bit confusing. If something is monatomic, what we do is we start with hydro. So we will always, wow, I can't spell today. We start with hydro. We will always start off the name of this thing with hydro, and then we have some sort of name of the element, and then we add the ending ic acid. So for example, if it was HBr, like I said, that would be hydrobromic acid. Again, all we're doing is changing the ending of bromide to bromic acid and then adding hydro at the start. Another great example would be HCl. For that, it would just be hydrochloric acid. Again, all we're doing is we're keeping the ic acid and the hydro locked into place, and we're just changing the bromic or the chloric. We're just changing based on what element it actually is. Now, if we get to a polyatomic ion, those rules change. If we get to a polyatomic ion, those rules are actually going to change. And so for something that is like H2SO4, that's one of my favorite acids and one of my favorite examples to use. So with H2SO4, we do not need to add the word hydro. Instead, we will end up generating two different rules. And the rules are as follows. I know that this is sulfuric acid. That's the formal name of this, sulfuric acid. The other thing that I know, if I go to my table of ions here, if I can ever find it, that's it here. I know that this came from the atom sulfate. I know it came from the atom sulfate. So I know that when I generated H2SO4, it was previously from an H plus and an SO4, which is sulfate, 2 minus, and then I swapped and dropped and ended up with H2SO4. And so the rules are if you ate it, it's icky. And then the other phrase that we use is if you bite it, it's delicious. So those are the two phrases that a lot of chemistry teachers like to use. And what that tells you is that if the ending was previously ate, in the case of our sulfate, you change it to ic acid. And then if you bite it, so if the ending of something was ite, you would change it to ous. And a perfect example of that. Is we can actually use, I want to use a different compound here. We can use nitrite here, this NO2. So an example of that then would be if we have H plus coming together with NO2 minus, we would swap and drop those, and then that would turn into, sorry, I'm just trying to zoom down here, that would turn into HNO2. And what that would then be is because this was nitrite, we want to change this ending to OUS acid. So this would then become nitrous acid. Instead of nitrite, it becomes nitrous acid. So the only thing that we changed there was the OUS, and then we added acid at the end. That is a very quick video on how to do and how to name acids and bases and what they are and some of the terminology. Hopefully you enjoyed and learned something. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. Peace.